Good morning, everyone. My name is Juliana Barabbas. I'm with the International Qualitative Research Toolkit based out of the University of British Columbia, Okanagan in Kelowna, BC. It is such a pleasure to welcome you all to our latest webinar in our Insights in Qualitative Research Methods series in partnership with ATLAS.ti and the School of Education of Inquiry Methodology at Indiana University. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Joe Norris to our webinar space this morning. Before we get started, I've got a few housekeeping items and I'll introduce our representative from ATLAS.ti as well in a moment here. I just wanted to let you all know we're going to be running question and answer through the Q&A panel. You should see a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen somewhere on your Zoom interface that will allow you to type in a question. I'll read those on your behalf at the end of the presentation, which should run about 40 to 45 minutes. We'll have 10 to 15 minutes for questions at the end, and we welcome your questions. It's meant to be as interactive as we can make it in this format. So it's my pleasure now to welcome our ATLAS.ti representative, Andrea Voicu. And Andrea, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Juliana. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone to this session of the Qualitative Methods Masterclass webinar series. My name is Andrea Voicu, and on behalf of Neringa Kalpokas, Director of ATLAS.ti, I am very pleased to announce that this series of webinars is organized by University of British Columbia and sponsored by ATLAS.ti, Software for Qualitative Data Analysis. The International Quality Research Toolkit, IQRT, offers two webinar series, Explorations in ATLAS.ti and Insights in Qualitative Research Methods. Through these webinars, we highlight innovative approaches and practices in qualitative data analysis with ATLAS.ti and in qualitative methods in general. We strongly believe that sponsoring the project can help other researchers around the world with their research projects. Before I gave the microphone to the moderator of this session, I just wanted to announce a few things about ATLAS.ti. If you're interested in learning the software, we have a bunch of free webinars on qualitative research, literature reviews, and ATLAS.ti in general. And finally, just because you are participating in this event, you deserve a special discount coupon for courses and licenses. Just drop us an email and we will be pleased to share it with you. Our email address is
Andrea, it seems that we have lost you. Joe, Andrea?
I'm here, yeah.
It appears we may have some technical issues. Andrea, good to see you back.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, we hear you now. You froze up just as you were explaining about free webinars. And it appears you have frozen again. Okay, Andrea, when you do come back, I think we'll move on to our introduction of Dr. Norris, and hopefully we'll have no more technical issues.
Yeah, my apologies for that.
That's totally okay. So I'm just going to introduce Dr. Norris and then we can hand things over. Joe Norris, Professor Emeritus at Brock University, is the recipient of the 2015 Tom Barone Award for Distinguished Contributions to Arts-Based Education Research from the Arts-Based Education Research Special Interest Group of the American Educational Research Association, ERA. He has focused his teaching and research on fostering a playful, creative, participatory, and socially aware stance towards self and other, has taught courses in drama and education, applied theater and research methods, qualitative and arts-based, and curriculum theory, among others, at various universities. His book, Play Building as Qualitative Research, a participatory arts-based approach, is based upon his extensive work with cast members of Mirror Theatre, who devise performance workshops that address a wide range of social issues using as applied theater approach, and won the American Educational Research Association's Qualitative Research Special Interest Group's 2011 Outstanding Book Award. Please help me welcome Dramatizing the Data for Dialogic Dissemination from Dr. Joe Norris. Dr. Norris, over to you.
Thank you. And I'll first, as I pull up my slideshow, oh, wrong place, stop sharing. Or am I still here? Hello? Yes, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'll pull up my slideshow. I want to thank the many cast members of Mirror Theatre over the years who have really contributed to my understanding of this process as it's developed. So I will share my screen and begin. It's this one I want to share. So you can see the screen?
We can.
Good, okay. Dramatizing the data for dialogic dissemination could probably take about 3 hours to cover all of the intricacies. So I'm going to give a number of highlights, starting with some epistemological and philosophical underpinnings of the methodology, and then move into some concrete examples. So a part of I will be addressing the questions of why and how.
Tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story. Remember what you said. You promised me, you said you would. You gotta give in, so I'll be good. Tell me a story, then I'll go to bed.
That's a song my father sang to me as I was growing up, as he tucked us in among a whole number of other songs. And I think it underpins my entire life in some ways. And to quote Haven, people are eager for stories, not dissertations, not lectures, not informative essays, for stories. So how do we tell our research stories? And I found the works of Laurel Richardson moving us in that direction. As she claims, whenever we write science, we are telling some kind of story or some part of a larger narrative. Some of our stories are more complex, more densely described, and offer greater opportunities as emancipatory documents. Others are more abstract, distant from lived experience, and reinscribe existent hegemonies. Even when we are not telling a story, we're very least embedding our research in a meta-narrative about, for example, how science progresses or how art is accomplished. I like how Laurel frames everything we do as a story. And in conversations with Jean Clandinin over the years, she says accountability is an account, which is a story. What I found quite remarkable is the CBC interview on October 4th about the pandemic. Nija Bashki was talking about the deaths in Alberta, and she says, we're hearing about numbers, and numbers start to mean not a whole lot. But I think we have to really pause and remember that each number is not a person, but a family. So moving back to the humanity through the story, she's talking about and using stories to help people understand the complexities of the world we're living in right now. Reason and Hawkins talk about storytelling as inquiry, a book I read back during my doctorate, and say stories, we have research that explains and research that expresses. For me, both are valid, but unfortunately over the years, although it's changing, explanation has been hegemonic over expressing. I prefer to talk about the epistemological discourse. We could use objective, subjective, qualitative, quantitative, positivistic, interpretistic. I have started to use the word closed discourses and open discourses. Closed discourses explain, convince, control, and have truth claims. The conversation stops. Open discourse express, they're evocative, metaphoric, dialogic, and situational. So for me, in my work, I tend to emphasize open discourses. At the same time, I'm not denying the importance of closed discourses. The person who works on my breaks, my surgeon example, for example, although there's a lot of improvisation in surgery, all of those have a certain degree of truth claims and control, which we do need. So it's not one versus the other, it's recognizing what is needed, when, and where. Richard Courtney talks in the dramatic curriculum is that we are all storytellers. In fact, he says we're all playwrights, because each day when we wake up, we begin to pre-live our world. Well, if this happens on the drive to work today, I'm going to do this. If not, I'm going to do that. We pre-live, we're playwriting, or we relive. I wish I didn't say that. Oh, I'm glad I said that, but I could have also added this. So very much storytelling and play building and playwriting is part of the human experience. We stop doing it when we're about 5 or 6 publicly, but still do it internally. It's an enormous wealth, and I like returning to that pre-living and reliving collectively with others as we dramatize data, although the word data is problematic, and then we do it so we can have conversations for dialogic dissemination as we playwright together. 3 different genres of dramatizing, and there's more, but I'm highlighting play building, is the work that I've done, among others, that I'll talk about later. Ethnodrama, Johnny Saldana and others, and then the solo performances of autoethnography, and Tammy Spry is one of the leaders in that particular genre of performing the data. Expressing. My website is going through a major revision, and this is an example of our cover page, new cover page. And so my work with Mirror Theatre over the last 25 plus years, 95 plus projects. I'm shocked and overwhelmed. When you climb a mountain, you don't look down. When you get up there, wow, did I get that far? So with that, as I said at the opening, I'm thankful for over 500 people who've joined me in this process in the last 25 years. So dramatizing the data, don't you distort it? I like what Banks and Banks say about truth in fiction. The opposite of facts isn't fiction, but something like error. The opposite of fiction isn't truth, but something like objectivity or actuality. Any genre or piece of writing that claims to be objective to represent the actual is a writing that denies its own experience. As David Locke said, in other words, no text is free of self-conscious constructions. No text can act as a mirror to the actual. So very much so for me, even numbers are reduction. We take a particular thing and we translate it into a numerical score, an opinion score. So we have to begin to recognize no text is free of self-conscious constructions. So the question of, well, you changed it. Well, I think we change it even when we put it into numbers, and we need to begin to recognize that. So what I begin to take a look at is the axiology of discourse. That's not from a social justice perspective what we talk about, but how we talk. And Flinders, Noddings, and others talked about the hidden curriculum and the null curriculum. And the hidden curriculum is imbued with power. And unfortunately, one of the things we talked about as we were preparing this is, can we make it into a dialogic workshop? Too complicated for today, but I would prefer not to be talking to you, but with you, and hopefully we'll have some time in the question and answers. So Paulo Freire talks about in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, that we would like our audiences to feel both consumers and producers of knowledge. And Boal, with Theater of the Oppressed, talks about the same thing, that our audiences become spectators. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that as we look at some of them. So both of these underpin, from my perspective, the axiology of discourse. Michael Rode, who's done considerable work in this over the years, talks about dialogic discourses. We want to create an activating scene that grabs everyone in the room. It's a scene that you create with your group. People need to care about it, recognize it, and be pulled into it. Most important, we want people to affect change in what they see. They need to see a clear opportunity to get involved and to explore options. An activating scene does not show what to do. It does not have a message. It asks what can be done. And we try to create the type of scene that brings our audience in as an activating scene and have them join us in rewriting it. And by rewriting it together, we come to co-create new knowledge based upon that occasion or experience. So, an axiology of discourse, there's didactic, to or for, and today I'm talking more to you, and it's important for this meeting at this time. It's time efficient. Dialogic, with, is my preference, but it's not time efficient and not easily done in this medium, although Mera Theatre in the last 2 years have been given dialogic workshops to classes and hospitals throughout Ontario and beyond. So today what I'm going to do is give some examples, and I'm just watching my timer. I want to leave room for questions and answers. Here's some examples. We're not going to be able to see them all, but I'm going to give around the top the source or the inspiration. Where did we get the ideas for our scenes? And again, we create them with aesthetic license. Truth claims, no. Plausible claims, yes. So we have external sources from focus groups. We have external sources from interviews. We have external sources from clients who brought in information. We have external sources from Twitter or public media. We have internal, external, the news, some things that are plausible. We have external from the literature, and sometimes we give a quote collage with the literature. We have internal from our prior experiences. We have internal creating metaphors. We have internal that we create during the devising. We have improvisation. And this one I want to highlight, the very last one that we'll look at, is one of the claims could be, yeah, Joe, it's great. You've had a company or a changing company over the last 25 years of actors. That's not easily done. Well, when we begin statistical studies, we don't understand the data and how to do it. So I think to break the hegemony, we need to expand that. And we're going to look at one, and I've done 7 or 8 over the years where I've worked with people who are not actors, who've created their own particular play building plays. So then we're going to look at what were the topics, what scene are we going to look at, the style of presentation, and how we could workshop it with live and or virtual audiences. The one last thing before we begin. Grotowski's book, Towards a Poor Theater, talks about minimalism. We don't have to have exotic sets, costumes, although they're nice in certain genres, but we don't need them for everything that we do. So we are minimalistic representations, and we let the story drive the experience, albeit we do use some aesthetic devices.
Breakfast time, and I do have your food, so will you please at least try it?
No.
But it looks really quite good, and I think you'll enjoy it.
No.
Could you please just calm down?
No.
Good morning, Joe. Are you hungry this morning?
No.
No? Would you like me to leave it here and maybe you can decide when you're hungry and eat it on your own time?
Hey, Dad. How are they treating you? That looks pretty good. Is that your lunch? It's a little early for lunch, or is that breakfast? Have you not eaten breakfast?
No.
Just haven't eaten it?
No.
Nurse. Could you explain to me why my dad hasn't eaten his breakfast?
Well, we did bring his breakfast in a couple of times, but he didn't seem like he wanted it, so we left it here for him and for him to eat it on his own time.
On his own time?
Yeah.
So you're just letting my dad go without food. When was the last time he ate?
He ate last night.
Last night?
Yeah.
And you didn't think it was important for him to eat this morning?
No, of course not. I just felt if I hovered over him and watched him eat, he'd feel uncomfortable, so I left it here so that he can eat on his own time.
Well, maybe if you did your job better, you would find a different tactic to get him to eat his food.
And I'll leave it at there for a second before we move to the next one, just to highlight a few things. First of all, myself, a co-worker from Brock University, and someone from Sunnybrook Hospital, we conducted 4 focus groups with family members and healthcare workers in the hospital with people with brain injury or dementia. We took their stories, and Kevin Hobbs, and I'll talk about that later, directed us in creating a play on person-centered care. And that whole play is up on my website. This scene is a breakfast scene. And as you can see, we use the shadow. And the shadow can be sometimes a very powerful dramatic device. And for us, all the characters who played patients at the hospital were behind a shadow screen, showing a degree of obscurity, but also trying to get to that aspect is we don't have information from them. These are representations projected. Now, how do we move it into dialogic dissemination? What we can do is put people into small groups and ask them to define their expectations. And that's one thing that came through the interviews, the focus groups, that parents came in, family members came in, expecting a different set of things to happen than what was realistic. So how are we given the time to define realistic expectations? And the clock became a very major theme in this particular production. Another one could be to rewind it and challenge the family member here in relation to, is he using, abusing, or misusing his power, and to hot seat. And the healthcare worker, how can we de-escalate? There's lots of ways we could go into dialogic dissemination. This particular one, I showed recently at Lakehead University. I'm not going to go much into it, but this came from the healthcare workers, the what they called visitors or guests at a homeless shelter in St. Catharines. And one of the themes that came through was how they were grateful that people weren't judging them. So we see in this particular scene,
Better.
and the scene continues. But if we look across the top, the external, we had another colleague at Brock University interview people at the shelter and then gave us parts of the transcripts. And we took that in and made it into a series of scenes, again, up on the website. We used image theater. And what we could do is have people, audience members, come up and resculpt people, challenging the whole concept of what is better. It ends with better for whom, with all of the bodies sculpted, questioning our whole concept of pedagogy to improve and our healthcare to fix. And very fundamental issues this particular scene challenges. This one dealt with external. The client came in with a series of themes from interviews that they created with first-year university students. And this one's called Setting the Pace, and we decided to use the style of machines. And again, we can have the audience say how they might fix the machine. I'm going to do a very quick run through of this particular one.
Day 1, 3 exams. I have 60 days to prepare. Pace 2. Day 10, I have 2 midterms, they're 15 days away.
Final papers.
Day 56, pace 10. Day 59, pace 11. Day 60, pace 11.
And again, working with audiences on this particular one, begin to explain, say, how do you pace your semester? Is this how you want to end up in the end? And by the way, one of the things that we say up here is we want to be amoral. Once we begin to say we have the answer, we find audiences turn off and they don't engage in the quest or in the question. So we present the scene and ask them. Some people can say, I do my best work when I'm under pressure, so I want to keep it this way. Others would say no, but at least we're beginning to create an awareness of what could be taking place and if we desire to change it. This is one of our most recent ones, and I'm including that because one of the things with it is to recognize that it was all done online. We rehearsed online, we recorded online, and external. This was expanded upon a quick Twitter comment and beginning to look at the implicit biases called What's a Title? We have 8 different variations. We performed it on the web and we looked at all kinds of different aspects of this. What's in a title? Version 1. Thaisa, is it Miss, Mrs., or Ms.?
Technically Mrs., but I actually prefer Ms.
But I think your husband would prefer Mrs.
Actually my wife doesn't care for Mrs. either, so just put Ms.
Oh, okay. What's in a title? Version 2.
Hey, good day. Is it Mrs., Miss, or Ms.?
Technically Mrs., but I prefer Ms.
Thanks. but I guess your husband might prefer Mrs.
Actually, my wife doesn't care for Mrs. either, so please just put Ms.
I want to stop it there. There's other examples, but one of the questions we could bring to the audience is, okay, as we were watching it, it's the exact same scene, but do we read it differently if it was a male asking the question or a female asking a question? And again, using binary concepts of gender, we could expand beyond that. The other thing that is of note, I'm in Edmonton. Most people are in St. Catharines. Angie is in Los Angeles, and Bernadette is in Toronto. So one of the things the web has enabled us to do is to be able to work with people across the globe. Angie did her doctoral dissertation in northern China using play building. This is an interesting one that got at the concept of NIMBY that came up with the homeless shelters. And again, it was based on a lot of news as we were writing this play about shelter locations. And I'm just going to show just a very quick bit of this to show how you can use dramatic effect to get to the data or dramatize it in a different way. The group on the left are people from a shelter looking at where to place the new shelter. People on the right are residents, and the chorus is for relief in the middle. I'll play the first bit of this one.
Board meeting. On our agenda today, we're going to be discussing the new shelter in the proposed suburb. Does anyone want to get us started with any opening thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking we could place it, there's a really good neighborhood with a lot of great social services like hospitals. Maybe we can put one there.
Don't throw your junk in my backyard, my backyard, my backyard. Don't throw your junk in my backyard's full. Okay.
So what we can see here, it's we're looking at, we call it NIMBY, and we use choral in the middle of it. What we have done and can do is hot seating. We take someone from either side, and we have the audience ask them questions. The questions themselves begin to bring up even more aspects of this particular phenomenon, a social phenomenon, and begin to explore possible ways where we can meet, or will the polarization of two sides remain? Challenging, but something for the audience to play right with.
Board meeting.
This one, we used a quote collage, and I did a search of quotes that talked about integrity. And this was for a piece that we did, and we used to open. We performed this live as well on academic integrity.
Cheating was easy,
but impossible to go back to.
I would prefer even to fail with honor
than to win by cheating.
The first and worst of all frauds is to cheat oneself.
All sin is easy after that.
All good is hard.
All evil is easy.
Dying, losing, cheating, and mediocrity is easy.
Stay away from easy.
Stay away from easy.
It's better to suffer wrong than to do it.
And happier to be sometimes cheated than not to trust.
Maybe I should cite that.
And how do we cite all of those quotes? And with that particular one, one of the things I have found over the time is embedded into the plays that we do are references to others, but to cite them destroys a lot of the aesthetic. So there's a tension there. There are acknowledgments, and that one we made the acknowledgement explicit within the drama itself.
Well,
this one we've workshopped many times. In fact, we workshopped it at the curriculum and pedagogy conference in New Orleans a number of years ago. We've workshopped it live in classes, etc. And it's a very powerful one. I'll explain how we workshop it in a minute.
Well, good morning, ladies. Thank you for coming to see me. I called you here today to talk about the paper that you handed in. Well, I guess there's no really easy way to say this, but I have essentially the same paper handed in by two different people. Would you care to maybe explain that to me a little bit?
I really don't know what's going on.
Well, Mary, why don't you have a look at the paper? Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I wrote this. This is my paper.
Okay, so Kat, that means that...
You're never home. We're in the same class, so I took it off your computer. I didn't think anybody would find out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, you're not there, so, and I do your dishes all the time, so I thought, you know, whatever.
I clean up after you. It doesn't matter.
All right, ladies, just calm down. So, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Kat, I'm gonna give you a 0 on this assignment. Mary, your mark on this paper will stand, but I'm going to encourage you to kind of protect yourself as you move forward. Maybe, you know, put a password protector on your computer.
Yeah.
You know, lock your bedroom door. Just something so that way this doesn't happen again.
Definitely, thank you. Yes, I will do that. Thank you so much.
Okay, any other?
Troy was our academic integrity officer at Brock at the time, a non-actor, and worked with us quite considerably over a few years. Mary and Kat were drama students. The prior experience was Troy had a story of this, just to let you know, it happened the second term as well. That's why it's called Second Chances. The style is realism, although it's stage. We know it's not an office. And one of the ways that we've workshopped it for dialogue, and people say, well, yeah, we can talk about it, but it's not easy to get audiences into role play. This one, we can't get them out of role play. What I ask them to do is get in groups of 2, and one take one character, one take the other, and create a scene later that night. The room is noisy. It's just full of conversations going back and forth. And then we see them, and together we analyze some of the themes and issues that are going on in every one of the reconstructed scenes. So it's not this scene. This scene is the evocateur. The scenes that are examined are the scenes that are created by our audiences. Again, moving into dialogue. On location, we looked at, I took the metaphor of when ready for mental health, which was something that was brought to us. And we have V7, you can see there's variations. And again, this one for a different group of people discuss what is help.
Come on, man, I'm waiting. Are you okay?
I wasn't ready.
So questioning, you know, how do we determine when to assist and when to let be? And that's not an easy thing to do. And it's worthwhile getting into conversations, the discussions, looking at the pros and cons and how we can tell. The whole TV show of interventions that were on for a while, I found quite violent towards the person. So, I mean, let's question what is appropriate help and how do we do it? And that begins to look at that one. We can move into group discussion. Not everything has to be dramatized. This one, it says internal drawing devising. As we were working on the homeless shelter one, I experienced this in a parking lot. And it's realism in as much as it's stage. We don't need a room, etc. And I'll show how we can explore this dialogically. So you're going to Costco on the weekend, aren't you?
Yeah.
So if I gave you $50, would you pick up a bunch of treats for next rehearsal?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thanks. Just bring the receipt and then we'll claim for it.
Okay.
Okay, good.
You know what this reminds me of?
What?
Have you guys seen the new $10 bill?
No.
No, I didn't know there was one.
Really? It's the first Canadian bill to feature a woman of color.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of $10 bills, when I was coming out of the Dollar Tree, picking up our coffee cups, mugs for rehearsal, there was a woman coming across the parking lot in a walker. And I figured out what was going to happen, and she said, "Hey, sir," and said, "Be a little friendly." I said, "Yes." She said, "Look, I have 3 teenage boys. They're hungry. We don't have any money. Would you mind giving me some cash?" Normally I say, "I don't have any change and I don't have any bills." And often I don't. I just go buy a credit card. But this time I looked in my wallet and I found a $10 bill and I gave it to her.
You gave her a $10 bill?
Yes.
That was really nice of you.
Yep, I think so.
But isn't there an LCBO right beside that Walmart?
Yes, and I knew that.
Well, she could have easily went and bought alcohol. If she's an addict, you're enabling her, Joe.
But you're just stereotyping and assuming that she's going to go to the LCBO and get alcohol.
So one of the things that we have, and I can show you an example if we have time, called For and Against, and we put characters in a tug of war, and the character on either side says reasons to give the $10 bill, reasons not to. 2 members of the audience often feel comfortable enough coming up and doing it, and members sit in their seats and give other ideas for or against. And again, it's complicated. But what happens is, again, we invite the audience into the dialogue. And a good example of amoral, many years ago when I first began, we used devil and angel. But the problem with devil and angel, the person who plays the devil, we know, is the one we don't want. So by being amoral, we look at the pros and cons. There's reasons to smoke. That's something we explored. If there wasn't reasons to smoke, nobody would be doing it. So let's look at the pros and cons of these actions rather than coming into our audiences and say, we have it worked out. I'm going to skip this one right now, but it's on budgeting. And just quickly, file cards. We give everyone, member of the audience, 4 or 5 file cards, and the person says, "Drinks on me," and buys a round of drinks instead of the book or the clicker or whatever. And we ask, what are the budgeting things you need to do? How often do we give our first-year students an opportunity to think clearly about budgets? So again, having them, and someone says, well, what about the textbooks? Drinks on me. What about et cetera? Drinks on me. You need an internet. Drinks on me, et cetera. So again, the play, the data is coming from the audience through the role play.
Okay, I just want to let everyone know before class ends.
And to conclude with the examples, one of our cast members, Nadia, who you saw a few times in the previous ones, worked with Candace, who you also saw, and worked with some high school students who were working with the local regional health authority to look at concepts of vaping in the high schools, and they created 4 scenes.
Yo, do you smell that?
Yeah, it kind of smells like donuts.
Oh, that smells so good. Brad, do you smell that? Do you think the cafeteria lady made donuts?
Oh, hey guys. No, actually, it's my vape. The e-juice inside. They're available in like so many different...
Well, wait, what if I wanted...
But you don't know all the health risks.
Yeah, but it's healthier than smoking.
No, your friends are doing it.
Yeah, well, sharing a vape is gross.
So you can see they took the realistic scene and moved it into an impressionistic scene with the tug of war that I'm talking about. So I'm going to conclude with saying all of these and more are up on my website. Many of them are embedded into plays, but they're broken up scene by scene, so people can choose a scene to work with class. And we just heard that a particular professor has been just using a vignette or two to talk about examples in her health class. Now with these, you can see this is what my old site looks like. This is what the new site, probably going to be up in a month. And if you want, you can email me. Now, just to let you know, a PDF is being created of this whole set of slides. So if you want to find an easy way to locate me, there's two there. Now, I want to raise, there's other kindred spirits out there. These are just a few. Diane Conrad, Edmonton, Athabasca going unmanned about prison. Contact Unload, George Bellevaux in British Columbia, looking at concepts of veterans and PTSD. Dan Harris and Christine Sinclair, critical plays on social justice. Rufus Stone with Kip Jones looked at data of interview with aging LGBTQ plus communities and dramatize professionally with professional actors, directors, about a 20-minute vignette. Harriet's host, Tara Gold, Steen at Toronto, and Karen Mesner on various queer LGBTQ issues, just to name a few. Now, to conclude, back in 2007, Canada Counts, or Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, sorry, my phone, and I'm not going to answer it. There. Argues for supporting high quality research and the advancement of knowledge in this field and the dissemination and transfer of research outcomes to academic and community and to the public at large. And to the public at large. And I make it a distinction here is the difference between accessible is different than being available or comprehensible. Yes, we can make our research available, but is it accessible and comprehensible? So part of my, Patricia Levy and Kip Jones, among many others, saying that arts-based research, Rita Irwin as well, and we've coined the term ARTORS, actor, researcher, teacher, from hers, Alexis and others, artography, artist, researcher, teacher, methodologies. So what I'm first of all encouraging is try it, this type of research, as producers of knowledge. To break the hegemony of discourse. There is epistemological, axiological, ontological, aesthetic. How often do we talk about the aesthetics of the research we do? And the pedagogical, moving from the didactic to the dialogic. And it's easier than we think. Hopefully, as you saw some of those scenes, shadow screen, tug of war, inner dialogue, etc. Part of the research, a new type of mixed methods, as Joe Norris talks about. If not, at least appreciate and understand it as consumers of research. I created a small bibliography. There's many more, but this gives a good overview. And of course, it'll be in the PDF. And I just wanted to highlight Kevin Hobbs, who did the one on person-centered, directed the one on person-centered care, received the Arts SIG of the Curriculum Studies of Canada Outstanding Thesis Award a couple of years ago. So it's being acknowledged in a number of circles. And at that, we'll move into conversations.
Dr. Norris, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that wonderful array of examples. I am certain that there are going to be some questions from our attendees. I'll just note some of the comments for the sake of the video. We've got, this is wonderful. So there was someone who left early who's looking for access to the recording. All of our people who, all the people who registered should get a link from our rep at ATLAS.ti, but all of our insights and explorations videos are also available on our IQRT archive site, and this one, including the PDF that has all of those wonderful references, will be available. Just waiting to see if anyone's going to type into the Q&A. Loving all the examples from another participant, from Valerie Michelson. That was wonderful, Joe. Thank you so much. I always keep learning from you. Not a surprise. There is a question that has popped up. Questions about process of dramatizing and data analysis. Do you use coding?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Again, it depends, but that's a good example of one. I would say for years I used a card system, and it's talked about in my book, Play Building, where we gather around a circle. And as we talked about it, we tell stories, and stories beget stories. But in the stories, we say, well, that's a theme about innocence. That's a theme about such. So we had about 8 to 10 different file folders, and we put themes in one file folder. We put potential titles in another. We put scene ideas in other. We put research scenes in others, music and props. So the process was used to circle as we talked and discussed, and we said, okay, how many people would like to work on this theme? Go. Or work on this scene idea? Go. And we divided into groups, and the actors themselves would determine which ones they would work on. Kevin Hobbs, in the one on person-centered care, took the focus group transcripts and created a number of themes and brought them back to the cast. And we use those themes, but it's not a linear process. It's far more spiral, far more iterative. And of course, sometimes we create a scene and we say, hey, there's a new theme that we didn't think about as a result of creating the scene. So it's a spiral, whirlpool, roller coaster, to use some metaphors. But yes, the expressing and explaining, we'd go back and forth between those. So it would be concrete and abstract. A lot to do. One of the choices in today is I wanted to give a number of examples to show that it doesn't mean sitting down and doing a traditional drama, realistic drama. We can use many aesthetic forms in order to do it.
So we have 3 more questions and not a lot of time to address them all. In fact, another one just popped up. So I'm going to start with, from Rosemary, how do you decide on what theatrical style to use for a project?
The simplest answer is you don't. In other words, if we consider one of the definitions of art is the unity of form and content. You know, so sometimes the content tells us what is the best way to tell this particular story. So for example, when we saw, don't throw your junk in my backyard, my backyard, my backyard, that particular one emerged out of nowhere. And we said, it's brilliant. And then slowly pieces came together. So it's more iterative in that regard. One of my favorite expressions in my cast note, well, I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there. You know, so you're open to it. And sometimes you try a style and it said it didn't work. You try another style, it didn't work. One we did many years ago on clothing, on our play of Bullying in Schools and Appropriate Clothing, what is appropriate, we had inner dialogue. And the inner dialogue showed the tensions that were being dramatized externally. But we tried that scene for a year and a half before we got a form that really helped us say, yeah, this gets as close as we can. But at the same time, we don't want to give an answer. We want to show the issue and let the audiences begin to enter into the question.
Definitely an ongoing process. And we all have another question here from Sheila. Can you talk a little bit more about how you facilitate a scene and how you may deal with a shy audience?
Shy audience, the first 5 seconds, is always the waiting, but we, as instructors, we know that when we ask a particular question. 2 things. One is I find a scene that grabs. So the dramas themselves grab people enough that they want to do something. Sometimes it's in small groups. Sometimes it's a scaffolding. For example, does anyone have a quarter? Thanks. Okay, and that's something simple. And then based upon that, would 2 people like to come up and be engaged in the coin toss and play? You're not going to act, but you're going to be the spokespeople. 2 more people. Pause, panic, pause, panic. Then you see someone with just a little bit of a move forward. Yes, but it's always invite. It's never force. If I've seen a lot of this work bully people by forcing them to come up, never. And then small group discussions is another safe way of doing it. And of course, we're trying different formats now online. Yeah.
Yes, of course. We've got, I think we have time for one more question and then closing comments. And I think this is a great one from Valerie again. Joe, you're clearly engaged in a great deal of transdisciplinary work. Are there particular disciplinary spaces and places where you see especially strong barriers and or opportunities for participatory theater?
I got at it a little bit in some of my other writing, and I know George Beliveau, Rita Irwin, and Johnny Saldana, among others. And I'm just looking at some of the people, Rosemary, among others, talk about the epistemology, the positivism. We want answers. And so it's more beginning to show the power of the story. One good example I can say, and I do want to go to Maria's question, but one of the ones was when I first started many years ago, we performed our play for parents and some students from a school just outside of Edmonton. The parents told us, and the principal told us as a result of the head of the PTA, that after seeing the play, they did not want us to come. But after they saw the workshop and the interaction with the students, they absolutely wanted us to come. So some of the proof is doing what you do. And, someone will come as a member of an audience and say, I'd like that. Will you do it for us? And most of our plays of the 95 were actually people came to us and say, I saw this work. Will you do this? So I think it's slowly by reputation. And I'm working right now with 2 people in health sciences and nursing from Brock University. So we're moving that way. But Maria, I want to ask, have you tried it with students in schools? That's where I started. Back before I started my PhD, I did this type of work with my junior high school students. We created the one, I still have the script on my shelf. This is an adolescent. And I can remember doing audience participation back in 1985. And one parent started to drill the students. And finally she said, you do know what you're talking about. So the proof is in what we do. I've done it in schools with high school groups, elementary students, tapping into our innate play building ability, which I spoke about at the beginning. So I've done it many times with students in schools. In fact, it started there, and we toured Alberta Safe and Caring Schools, this type of work. They created new scenes, and some of our plays have scenes that they told us that they experienced that they gave us permission to bring in. So the data dissemination was also a form of data generation. Sadly, one particular scene, or one tour, 3 teachers from 3 different communities in Alberta said, "This is great. Can you do one about the staff room?" So they recognize the tensions in their own environments as well. So yes, very much in schools.
This has just been a wonderful set of conversations. I understand why you would have liked this to be a more dialogic process, but unfortunately our hour is almost up. I'm going to share my screen very briefly as I give our last thanks and do just a little plug for some upcoming webinars in this series. We've got November 10th, 17th, and 30th, ranging from making images and visualizing worlds to international qualitative research in international contexts and ethnographic path. So I encourage all of you to check out our website. It's listed here. It'll be available also in, if you come back to our website, check out our archive. I want to thank you again, Dr. Norris, for this wonderful, comprehensive presentation of your work and ideas. I hope we can bring you back at a future date. Certainly would be wonderful, and explore some of the other research topics that you've been developing more recently and continue. Andrea, any last comments from you as well?
I would like to as well. Thank you everyone for joining the webinar. Dr. Joe Norris, thank you as well. And my apologies for the technicalities at the beginning. I just wanted to let everyone know that we are pleased to offer a discount to all the participants. We are going to be sending the recording for today's webinar, and in case anyone has any questions, we're going to be more than happy to answer to it. So just thank you.
Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Norris, for this wonderful presentation. It's been great listening and hearing the discussions, and we hope to see you all again at a next IQRT webinar soon. So have a great day.
And thanks to all the cast members for joining us in this methodology in the debates. You know, we have many debates as we explore these complex issues, but trying to find ways to dramatize them to help others enter into the conversations. So thanks to all the cast members. Live long and prosper.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.